everybody. Welcome back to another Wednesday and another Dragonfly Paradigm Lunchtime Book Club episode. We are talking about everything from Chapter 7 of, oops, I forgot to pick up my book here, What Happened to You. But first off, real quick, it is, depending on where you live, you may be experiencing this as well, but the West Coast is in a bit of a heat wave today, and it is already at 12 o'clock here, 100 degrees. So we're on tap to reach 112 today. So this is going to be short and sweet. I had to turn off my fans and my air conditioning so the noise wouldn't be here, and so I'm hoping I won't melt on camera. But I guess that could be funny as well. But anyway, let's get right into it. So chapter 7 this week is titled Post-Traumatic Wisdom. Such a good title. I think just the phrase, we're used to hearing post-traumatic stress, but post-traumatic wisdom makes me almost feel hopeful that there is a light at the end of the trauma tunnel, which I think really ends up being not only wisdom, but I think knowledge is, roped in there together. I've said it before, I've always believed and still do that knowledge is power. So let's get into this chapter. For me, the main topic really is resilience and resilience building, and I think this chapter really did a good job of giving us some tools and tips to help us do that. It made me very excited as well, because that is the exact subject that I am creating resources on to help parents of cleft-affected children. I'm working on a resilience building guide right now that I'm hoping to share with parents of children, and also family members of children that are cleft affected, that will help them learn resilience building skills. So that got me super excited that this is kind of right in my wheelhouse anyway of where I am and the research that I want to be doing. I love the fact that on page 201 Dr. Perry says that resilience is a capability that can wax and wane, not a permanent innate trait. No one is born resilient. It is a skill to hone and strengthen throughout our lives. And I think, too, that just goes to sort of the title of this chapter, Post-Traumatic Wisdom. There's hope. There's something that we can do to, build ourselves up to handle all the trials and tribulations that we will face and have faced in our lives. He continues on to say during his conversations with Oprah in this chapter that one of the main keys to being resilient and building resilience is our sense of connectedness to others. And through that connectedness, we not only build resilience, but we then are also able to create what they call post-traumatic wisdom. And from that wisdom comes hope. I think that's, again, kind of their main thread, their main sort of suggestion in this chapter is that idea of, human beings are social creatures. We're designed to need each other, to want to be around each other, and that is one of the main keys for strengthening our own resilience. He continues on and highlights that process through his talk about Allie, the young girl who, even after suffering intense and horrific trauma, she was able to be resilient because of her community and social connections. As he says, Allie was able to make sense of the trauma and put it in the context of her beliefs that were a result of her safe and stable relationships. And that just made me think on how important it is to have the people in our lives that we feel safe enough with to share and talk about the trauma we have experienced. Certainly a select few. We don't share that with everybody. But there are those few that we are brave enough to be that vulnerable with, to let down our guard. Oprah puts it very nicely on page 202 that everyone needs people who can listen, be present, and make them feel heard and seen. That a key to healing from trauma is finding your people and your community. I will just a quick aside here. One of the things I liked about this chapter too is that they brought back some themes from earlier chapters. I feel like here with this one, they're really working to kind of connect the dots, to bring the example of the war veteran with PTSD and how rhythm really helped him from the little boy that experienced the loss of his mother, and that brief communication he had with the grocery store clerk. I liked how they kind of helped sort of weave that back in. I feel a bit more I guess solid in everything I've read so far. I feel like they did a good job with this one, kind of bringing everything sort of back to the forefront to continue on for the rest of that. But anyway, getting back to it, again, that key, is finding your people, finding your community. But how do you do that? Dr. Perry asks that question at the end of the chapter on page 208. How can we create community when we are so mobile, so screened up, so disconnected? And I think that's a valid question and a valid point. And I think it's harder too to make connections when you're older. I had my daughter older than most people do. I was 35, and it's hard to kind of make new friends, mom friends, however you want to think about it. But as you get older and sort of set in your ways and your routines, and you've got your your work, you've got your home, it's hard to figure out, well, gosh, how do I meet new people? And I think now, with social media, we're on our phones, and we are much more isolated in that way. But I do think there's a flip side to that. For me personally, I have really enjoyed finding communities on social media. One in particular that I joined is for cleft affected individuals only. And it's been kind of a breath of fresh air really for me to be a part of this group and this community that's just full of people just like me. It's again, that comforting sort of familiar feeling. As I've mentioned before, growing up, there was no one else like me in the town I lived in. And I think now how wonderful it would have been to have this type of group filled with people just like me, who understood my feelings and had many of the same concerns and experiences as I did. I think it would have really helped, not feeling alone. And like, even though I had a loving family and I had good friends, but they didn't get it. They didn't really know what it felt like. So being in this group now, not only is comforting to kind of find my people, but it allows me to share my experience and my post-traumatic wisdom with those that ask for help or advice. Certainly younger people that are in that group. It really has given me, kind of being of service, stepping outside of myself, sharing what I've gone through, what I've learned, in order to help others when they ask for it. It's a really great feeling. And I think that people, if you reach out and look for it, you can find groups that speak to you on some level. So again, even though we are more screened up, as Dr. Perry puts it, it's not necessarily a bad thing. If the community is healthy, safe, and filling a need that you have, then I'd say that's great. And especially, over this past, year and a half of the pandemic, in-person social gatherings are tough to come by. either logistically, what you're comfortable with, safety wise. It can be hard to do that, especially living in smaller towns. You don't necessarily have access to what you would in larger cities. Um, so I think, at least right now, if you're coming at it with a purpose of enriching your life and helping others, then social media, online communities are great. Uh, so my takeaways really from this chapter is it left me with an overall feeling of hope. It's hopeful to me to know that resilience is built. It is something we can work to strengthen every day. That it's not something that we're either born with or we're not, and that's it, and so sorry for you if you don't have it. It's something that we can, um, work to do within ourselves, but we have to actively participate. We have to work at it. And I think one way to do that, as I mentioned in the book or in this chapter over and over, is to build up and foster our own sense of connectedness. Reach out to a group to join on social media. Reach out to a person that you've been wanting to talk to. Be courageous enough to reach out. Because once you find your people, you will have, as Oprah says, the people who see you, listen to you, and will be there for you. And through that, there will be healing. So, like I said, short and sweet. It is hot. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you are enjoying the book as much as I am, and we'll see you next week for Chapter 8.